Guys, good evening. Hello, everybody. Welcome once again. I think we've done longer than a year now, and we've done 1 or 2 talks every single month. So the trend continues. Thank you again. There's so many familiar faces of people that keep coming up. So thank you for your support. Just a reminder for the new people that have come, we like doing this every month because it's part of the personal growth talk. And what we say is, as a bunch of expats that we are, isn't it wonderful to learn from one another? We've all had tremendous experiences and we've had journeys bringing us to this place, learn different things, and we get up here and we share the knowledge and we share the opportunities that we've had in life, and that's where we grow as people right now. So tonight we've got a special guest, Gary Mulder. Gary is one of the busiest people on our IMP group. There's not one word that's from him on the group every single day. So he's very engaged in a multiple of the group. And Gary agreed to talk to us tonight, as you know, on AI.
Is it him or is it a bot?
As a what?
Is it him or a bot?
I neither confirm nor deny.
No. Well, he's in New Zealand. That doesn't look like an All Black, so we don't go. Gary started in New Zealand. He's in New Zealand. And started studying AI on a grad program in the 90s. Now, I don't know. I didn't think IT existed in the 90s. But AI existed. Gary was there already. He graduated in New Zealand, then left and went to the States to find fame and fortune. He found the latter. Didn't stay around there too long and retired quite young, and found his way to Qashqai. We are the privileged ones to be able to understand how he got that right and to have a look and share what he's got to say today. Gary, thanks for the prep. The slides are brilliant. I've seen them. Thanks for all the hard work, and thank you for agreeing to talk to us tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Luigi, for the introduction. So anyway, as Luigi said, I majored in AI 30 years ago now, and actually returned to AI 10 years ago in London. And I've been watching it very, very closely, and we're at the point where things are getting very, very interesting. But the way that I see that people were using AI and the way that I use AI is quite different, because I've been using it for 3 years and I really understand how it works. So the graphics and everything in the slides were generated with AI, of course. It's with what is called Gemini Nano Banana. So all the content I wrote with help from AI, but all the graphics, I'm not an artist, so this is purely generated by AI. I just put a prompt in and I said, make it pasteis and make it sort of topical, and hey, there's even a bottle of wine, and I think it's even Vinho Verde or something like that. So anyway, so I want to start with a small quiz, and the quiz is Shakespearean, and basically I've got 2 quotes here, and very briefly, can we guess which one was generated by AI? Do you think it was the blue quote or the red quote that was generated by AI? Show of hands for the blue quote. Anybody? So everyone thinks that the red quote was generated by AI, but the blue quote was not. Okay, well, both of them were generated by AI. Sorry.
Great question.
Yeah, a small trick question. The reality is that AI has read every single work of Shakespeare. And when I say read, it's seen every single book and it's been ingested into the model. So the model has seen every single word of Shakespeare. Not only has it seen every word of every play of Shakespeare, it's seen every review of a Shakespearean play, it's seen every public commentary about Shakespeare, every popular book perhaps on Shakespeare. All of that is in AI. So if you ever had a question about Shakespeare, if you ask AI about Shakespeare, you probably get as good an answer from the average Shakespeare as compared to a Shakespearean scholar or something like that. Maybe the best of the best Shakespearean scholars knows more about Shakespeare than AI, but I'm fairly sure they could not quote chapter and verse literally of every single piece of Shakespeare. And you can go to AI and basically ask for it. And because it's seen all of Shakespeare, it knows how to generate Shakespeare, which is why these very Shakespearean quotes are complete fiction. And the reality is that we're on this yellow line here. All these blue dots here are previous models, and these are models from last year. And Gemini, you might have heard of Gemini. This is, this was actually, I created this slide in December, and the slide is already out of date because the Gemini 3.1 now, and it actually scored around about 45%. So if you draw this yellow line out on the progress, basically you can see in about 2030, what this is measuring here is the accuracy on an exam.
Is it okay to ask questions as we go?
Can we do it at the end? Because I'm not sure on time. Okay. So what this is showing you is an examination called Humanity's Last Exam. And basically, this organization reached out to all these academics across 100 different subjects and asked them for the most difficult questions, the most difficult Shakespeare question, the most difficult mathematics questions, the most difficult question in any area that you might know or any academic might know. So we're talking about basically Humanity's Last Exam is the Uber university exam. If you can pass this exam, you can basically get a PhD in any subject at an average university. All right. And if you follow this yellow line, basically by 2030, in your pocket will be a university's worth of knowledge. A mathematician, a Shakespeare scholar, a physicist, a chemist, a biologist, a medical doctor, everything, all right. And as I said, this was generated in December, and the latest Gemini is actually much higher on that line, so it's probably going to be earlier than 2030 at this point. So, what I've noticed is a lot of people struggle in using AI, and they say, well, it doesn't really understand me, and things like that. And you need to have a good mental model on what the AI is good at and what the AI is bad at. And the model that I like is as a graduate intern. Now, you probably work with graduate interns, you might manage them. You certainly wouldn't give them a huge amount of responsibility on the first day that they started their job, or even in 6 months or something like that. So remember that the AI has got, or soon will have, or is getting to a complete understanding of all theoretical academic knowledge, which is essentially what a graduate intern is. If you've got a PhD graduate intern, he's got, or she's got, a lot of theoretical knowledge. But when that theory actually hits practice in a corporate environment or a practical environment, they don't really do that well. You can't dump them into an operating room and tell them to do heart surgery. You need to basically give them all the training or give them all the support so that they understand the task. So the key that whenever you're interacting with AI is to think of it like a graduate intern. It has lots of theoretical knowledge. It knows far, far more than you or I or anybody, or most anybody, but it has very limited judgment and maturity. It doesn't understand who you are, it doesn't understand your problem, it doesn't understand the details of what you are trying to solve. So you need to explain it. And this is where context is so critical. And, well, you can see the cartoon here, you know, it's the same problem. Help, I think I broke my phone. But there's a complete difference between in a doctor's office as compared to the bottom of the cliff. So if you go to the AI and say, help, I think I broke my phone, if you don't explain the context of what you are and what you're doing, then essentially it's not going to be able to help you. All right. I'm going to go very quickly through this example because this was a very instructive one. This is the floor plan of my apartment, and the problem that I had 4 years ago is I wanted to install air conditioners, and I wanted the split units and things like that, and it was quite stressful trying to find, you know, an air conditioning person in Portugal, and it would have been really nice to know that he wasn't, you know, overselling me and things like that. And luckily I found a good guy, but I tried this as an example. So this is my floor plan of my apartment, and this was the prompt that I had. And I'm not going to read it out, but the key thing is here, it got one of the AC units perfectly, but it did not get the AC unit in the front of my apartment correct. It actually, the AC unit that it suggested was actually too large, okay. And then I realized, oh, wait a sec, the front of my apartment is sun facing, so I added that to the context, and I went, oh, then you don't need such a strong AC unit because it'll stay warm most of the time because of the sun. So the key here is that once I gave it the complete context, classically insulated Portuguese apartment, these rooms are sun facing, then essentially it was able to size the AC units identical to the air conditioning expert with all of his Portuguese knowledge. So here's a technique, and I'm going to go through these very quickly, but I'll give you the slides give you the slides at the end, so you can copy and paste these in and try them for yourself. One technique to actually show context is you can turn the AI into like a Sherlock Holmes, and you can ask it to do sort of like 20 questions. So ask me 20 simple yes/no questions, one at a time, to understand this. So I'm not recommending you do medical diagnosis, but you don't know what information to give to the AI in order to do a good diagnosis. What does a doctor do? He asks you lots of questions. Well, you can turn the AI into a medical doctor and say, ask me 20 questions, or even better, ask me as many questions as you need until you're certain you can make a diagnosis. All right. Now, still, if you're not going to be able to explain your symptoms, so this is not a replacement for a doctor, but as a second opinion, it's fantastic, all right? Because I've had problems with not being able to communicate to doctors, and if I do this before I go to the doctor, then already I have answers to the questions that the doctor might ask me, or that I would have never thought of, okay? Now, I'm going to skip over this example, but as I say, you can look at it in the slides, but it's basically network diagnosis. Your internet doesn't work. You can turn it around and you can turn the AI into tech support. And since the AI speaks English, it's going to be a lot easier to use it to fix the problem than calling Vodafone, because I don't speak Portuguese and it's impossible. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you can use the AI to ask you for the information. That's the critical thing. And that allows it to get the context. Another technique you can use is you can ask the AI anything that isn't illegal. You can ask it for 1,000,000 ideas, 100 ideas, so ask it for a list of ideas. Now, a lot of people say that AI isn't very creative, and the reality is the first answer that the AI gives you is often not the best answer. But if you ask it for 20 ideas, then you go, oh, the 10th idea is really good. Can you give me 10 more ideas like the 10th idea? So you can do this iteration, and it's quite happy to sit there for hours giving you more and more crazy ideas, and you can even go, make it crazier, make it more creative, and things like that. Because, it's infinitely patient, and it's fantastic for idea generation. So lists is a great thing. Ask it for a list of ideas or a list of suggestions. And again, if you want to do something, you give it the context and you ask for a list of activities. This was the example of a family's coming to Portugal. What should I do with them? So the final thing is, let's say you want to learn a subject that you don't understand much about. What you can do is, again, give the AI the context that you're an expert in your own speciality, all right? So let's say I'm an expert at engines and whatnot, but I want to learn quantum physics. Well, then you can literally say, teach me quantum physics, but explain it like a car engine. And the AI will happily go into any amount of detail about quantum physics and explain it as a car engine. Or any subject. You're an expert at a subject that you know very well, and if it's broadly similar to the subject you want to learn about, all right, then you can actually just ask the AI, explain this to me. Like, you can ask the AI for a medical diagnosis and you go, well, I don't understand the terminology here. Explain it to me like I'm 10 years old. And it will explain the medical diagnosis as if you're 10 years old. So, One issue with these models is that there is model bias. All right, okay, and whether you agree with the bias or disagree with the bias, there is bias in these models. These models are trained in Northern California, the American models are. So they have a political orientation of Northern California. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But this was done with Gemini, and I had this idea for a cartoon. And I basically said Donald Trump playing golf with the golf balls is Ukrainian. And Gemini goes, oh, no, that's a political figure. I don't generate images of political figures. And I went, okay, how about fat guy with a blonde hairstyle? Oh, yeah, I can do that. So this is not Donald Trump. All right. But it did generate the cartoon. And what's even more interesting is I was just asking you about a fat guy with a blonde hairstyle and Ukrainian golf balls here. There is a Russian bear in the back of this image. I did not ask for a Russian bear. So it understood exactly my intention, even though I didn't mention his blondness, okay. And what's even more interesting, there's a destroyed building with a hammer and sickle on the back. So it's going, oh yeah, Ukraine destroyed buildings, but it's slightly messed up the metaphor because of course that's a communist symbol, not sort of a Russian modern symbol and stuff like that. There is model bias here. So when you ask for something, you have to understand that you're going to get a Northern Californian political answer for political questions. And if you use a Chinese model, you do not ask about Tiananmen Square because it goes, that didn't happen. So you've got to understand where these models come from. And most conservatives aren't going to enjoy using these models because of that. They are reasonably politically neutral, but there is a bias between liberal North Californian values, as it were. AI privacy is a critical thing, and the reality is anything you share with these models is exactly like sending an email. When you send an email over the internet, you have to assume that anybody between Google, the company that's moving that email across the internet and the company and the system that's receiving that could read your email. And the reality is whatever you enter into the model, either Google or OpenAI or Claude or whatever, may use the information that you're typing into the model to help improve the model. So you cannot assume privacy. With that being said, I will recommend that there is a switch in Claude, Anthropic Claude, one of the three major American models, one of the four major models, which says, do not train on my messages. That switch does not exist in the other models. Gemini sort of has a feature, but it's a very deceptive feature that you can say, do not keep a history of my chats, which sounds about the same. But what happens is then you can't go back and find an old chat, and it's so irritating that you disable that. And when you say yes, keep a history, that history is then available for Google to train on. There is one way that you can get Google Gemini to not keep your messages and train on them. If you have a Google Business subscription, using, I can't remember the name of it, but it explicitly says for Google business users, we will not train on your highly sensitive corporate data. It's understandable, they're trying to keep their corporate clients happy. Right? So if you really want privacy and you want to use Gemini, you need a commercial account. Even the $20 or €20 account does not guarantee you privacy. I personally use Claude for anything personal that I'm sharing with it. And it's not that Claude is guaranteed to be private. It's just I feel that Anthropic, the company behind Claude, is the least worst in terms of morals. Okay, I don't like any of these companies. I do not trust them. I do not trust them with my data. But again, Anthropic seems to be the least worst one. And if you've been reading the news, Anthropic is now in a fight with Donald Trump and the Department of War because Anthropic is refusing to allow Claude to be used for dangerous activities. And that's not because they're trying to control what the government does, but because they understand the limitations of their own model, and they say, you can't do this with the model, you're going to get wrong answers out of it, and that's potentially going to kill people. And then you have OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, going, yeah, sure. 2 days later, sign on the dotted line. So, make your mind up, okay, who wants to work with the current administration in the US and who has a moral stance about these models are not ready for deciding who lives and who dies, to put it bluntly. Okay. So in terms of privacy, you do not have any privacy as the assumption, but there are ways to have less worse privacy. So, this is the final sort of slide on the theory, and what I recommend if you really want to understand where we are in the future, as I said, I've been following AI and I studied the technology behind large language models like ChatGPT and Claude for about 30 years now. And I was reading science fiction in the 80s because I thought this stuff was fantastic as a teenager back in New Zealand, before the internet and everything. And my favorite movie from the 80s was Blade Runner, and that is a dystopian, horrible world, and hopefully that will not be the future that we have, okay. With any luck, the future that we're going to have is like the movie Her. And it's a Spike Jonze movie. It's a really, really good movie. Even if you're not interested in AI, if you're not interested in technology or anything like that, it's a good movie to watch. And Her is sort of the complicated but good outcome of AI. And I can see in 5 or 10 years that what is portrayed in Her is going to become reality. Things are just moving so fast. As I showed you on that first slide, the slide's out of date because it's 3 months old, sort of thing. And another movie, and this is more a Steven Spielberg sort of teenage movie, is Ready Player One. And this is virtual reality and, evil corporations and stuff. This is probably, realistically, it's going to be half Her and half Ready Player One. There's going to be some great, wonderful experiences that we have with AI, and then we're going to have the horrible corporate takeover by Sam Altman and OpenAI, and it's going to be somewhere in the middle. But with any luck, we won't have the Blade Runner situation because that's not a good future. We don't want to go there. All right. Now, I'm going to do a demo, and I haven't tried this with the internet and stuff like that. Oh, summary, sorry. So, to summarize, AI capabilities are rapidly encompassing all academic knowledge. All right. You're going to have a complete university in your pocket. All right. Of graduates, okay. That's the key here. So, a graduate intern with encyclopedic knowledge, but poor judgment and maturity. Context is critical. You absolutely have to give it the right context. The more the time that you spend on explaining your problem to the AI, the better the results you'll get out of it. And I think this is the biggest disconnect between how I use AI, because I've got this graduate intern model and I have to explain everything. And once I explain everything, now I finally get useful answers out of it. Lists of ideas is one way to generate to have the AI work for you. 20 questions is another way for it to ask you for the context that it needs to answer your question. And again, use metaphors that you're personally familiar with. You're all experts in whatever you've done for your whole career. Just tell the AI, this is what I know, explain it to me in those terms. It knows your career, so it's able to talk in your language. All models have bias because they're trained on the internet and their values are then, fine-tuned by the companies that actually sell these models. No absolute privacy. And I don't, I've been in this industry for 30 years. I hesitate to say how good AI is going to be next year. 2030, no clue, to be honest. It's a very exciting and slightly scary time because we really have a technology that isn't quite as powerful as nuclear weapons, but potentially could be as destructive. All right. So, here's the demo that I'm going to try, and I will briefly go over the key things again that you've got to consider if you're using, as this is a practical demo case of how to use AI to solve a very important problem to all of us, all right? And the key is that if you ask it for qualitative opinions, then you're going to get the model bias, and it's going to assume that you're American, it's going to assume you're a certain demographic, and it's going to give you a fairly generic internet answer about what you want. So is my portfolio good? That's a difficult question to ask, because the AI doesn't know. That's like going to a graduate intern finance advisor and says, is my portfolio good? Would you trust his or her advice? Never. Okay. All right. Another quality, but a better question is a quantitative or structural question. So here's the context. I'm 65, retired, risk averse, and need guaranteed income. Review the portfolio. Now it understands who you are. Of course, it's still going to assume you're American because these models are targeted at an American audience. So it's going to give you American retiree advice, which isn't much use if you're European or New Zealand or wherever. Okay. So another qualitative question would be, is NVIDIA undervalued? Well, compared to what? Compared to Microsoft? Compared to IBM? Compared to AT&T? It's a difficult question to answer because it's a qualitative one. But if you say, well, here's Google and here's NVIDIA, compare these two companies, that's a quantitative question that the AI is going to go, yeah, this is better, this is worse. This is better, this is worse. Another qualitative question is, how is the company culture affecting growth? What do you mean by company culture? Do you mean American company culture? Do you mean German company culture? Do you mean New Zealand? All right. Again, it's going to assume American company culture, which is all about profit maximization or whatever. So you're not going to get a particularly useful answer out of it. But if you understand some ways to value companies, all right, give it some financial statements and ask it for specific comparisons on specific metrics, which is a structural, how good is this company based on these well understood financial metrics. All right. Another qualitative question is, will the Fed raise rates next month? Who knows? Everybody has an opinion about what the Fed should do, including a certain president sort of thing. But you can say, assuming that interest rates rise, which is an assumption that you can ask the model to assume, look at the risk factors for this particular company, and here's the information on this company. So now it just automatically just assumes interest rates are rising, and it will look through that company's financial information for its debt exposure. Because of course, if interest rates go up and it's got a lot of debt, that's a problem. So that's a much easier question for the AI to answer.
Gary, this was a great presentation in the sense that it gave us good academic background, and then it gave us practical solutions.
Hope so.
And then
Interactive.
it became interactive in a conversation, which we will carry on.
Mm-hmm.
So that was brilliant. Thank you very much, Gary. Thank you for your time.